Hello my friends, and welcome to Ian's Kitchen, my kitchen, where we together are going to do some food magic and some alchemy. So we've got our fish stock from the previous video, and what we need to do is clean it up. The thing is, the fish stock, once sieved through the chinois, still has a lot of particulates in it. If you reduce it with the particulates in, they can burn, they can taste the taste, they can change the taste in the soup. They can make it bitter too. So it's best if you take them out, and it makes the soup wider or lighter. So what you do is you still have your chinoise, and you need a rag that's imbibed with water. Why? Because that way it's not going to absorb your stock, because it's already imbibed. So what you do is first you finish off taking the foam, whatever's coming up from in the boiling process. This foam is part of the impurities in the soup. And when you've done that, you put it through your chinoise. Nice and easy. Don't burn yourself. This stuff is hot. As you may notice, I'm putting it into a pot with a bigger surface than the pot that I'm currently using. There's a reason for that. The reason being that when you have a pot with a bigger surface, you get more evaporation. And that's what you want. In this case, I want more evaporation because I'm going to be reducing this stock just a little bit. Just a little bit. Not too much, because that changes the taste too, a lot. So here, I'm just using the ladle and slowly pushing the stock through the cloth and through the chinoise. And what's going to happen is all those little particulates, they're going to stay stuck in the cloth because it's a fine mesh. Beautiful smoky fish smell coming off the soup right now. And later on, after we're done with this, we're just going to add a little bit of white wine vinegar to balance out the acid. Boil it up. So this is getting to the point where the particulates are stopping the last little bit of soup from coming out, and it's becoming like a sort of puree. I'm going to stop it here. But you can see the particulates making it quite a thick sort of puree consistency. That's not what we want in the soup. And what's left in the soup is this wider, cleaner, clearer soup, which we now are going to reduce with a little bit of cream and a little bit of that white wine vinegar. Normally you would use white wine. I don't have it right now, so that's why I'm using the white wine vinegar. Cheaper too. So this is just some white wine vinegar. I'm going to put a little bit of it in the soup to balance out the acidity. And that's going to do something with the soup too. It's going to start pulling up those impurities when it boils again, so that we can foam it one more time. All right. Our soup is in the pot. Bigger pot, more evaporation, more surface. It's boiling. So now what we need to do, after we've added the vinegar is pulling a few more of those impurities out. So now we're just going to foam it. Make a little well in the center there so that the foam goes out to the sides, and nice and easy. Pick up the foam that you can pick up without taking too much of the soup under it. Just a little extra so that you get a nice, smooth, silky soup that's beautiful to taste and eat. Now, as I mentioned in a previous video, you could use fish stock cubes instead of salt. In this case, my stock is very, very tasty, so I don't think I will be using that, but it's always an option. It's good to have options. So, now soup is nice and defoamed. So what you're gonna do now is you're gonna use your cream. And here I'm putting 1 liter of cream, making a big portion. Feeding a lot of people tonight. like so. Little trick of the trade, you didn't get all the cream out of the container. So what you do is you leave it beside, and when it warms up a bit, you can get the last little bit of cream out. So you don't throw some cream into the garbage that you could have used in your soup. Now we have to wait for it to boil. Then we're going to thicken it with some cornstarch and water. Then we're going to add the vegetables, which in this case are onion tops. You can call them spring onions too. We've got some root veg here. We've got some peas. And then after that, we're going to add our beautiful salmon and smoked haddock. And that is going to add a beautiful hit of taste. The last thing we got to do is to season it with salt and pepper. The reason I don't season it beforehand is because when you're reducing the soup, the salt is going to intensify. So if you season it too much, if it's salty to the taste now and it boils for a while later on, I guarantee it's going to be too salty by the end. So watch out for that. Here we go, guys and gals. The soup is boiling. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take this cornstarch that's just settled a bit on the bottom. We have a mixture of cornstarch and water here, and we're going to need to thicken it. So, little word of advice, do not put all your cornstarch and your water in at once. Put it in gradually. Reason for this being is cornstarch doesn't really thicken until the soup comes back to a boil. And you won't know how thick the soup is before you've tested how much cornstarch is in the soup. So if you put all your cornstarch in at once, you might end up with a puree. So little word of advice, put it in gradually. You put it in, whisk it in so it gets nicely incorporated, and then you let the soup boil up again. Another thing we can do in the meantime, well, it's already simmering, which is a good thing. Another thing we can do in the meantime is season a bit, just a bit. We'll finish it off later on. Here I've got a ready mixture of white pepper and salt. So why white pepper? Well, reason being is we used so much time to get the soup nice, white, pristine. You don't want to mess it up with black pepper, do you? So, it's boiling up. I can actually see I can use more cornstarch because I like my cream soups a bit thick. So, I think I'll just put in the rest of the cornstarch. As you're going along and cooking, one thing you might want to do is taste the soup. See how it's developing. A lot of people wait till the end to taste things. That takes away the possibility for you to correct the soup along the way. I can see that the soup is not as thick as I want it to be. There's no problem with adding more starch. So, if you've never done a starch mixture before, it's very easy to do. Get your cornstarch, put it in a bowl, and add a little bit of cold water. That's basically it. You don't want to add too much water, but because then you'll be adding water to the soup and that's going to dilute it. That's not what you want. You want to add enough cornstarch that it dissolves in the water nicely, and that's going to thicken your soup. The reason we add in the water the way we do like this is so that you don't get lumps in your soup. So, now that the soup is nicely thickened, we need to start flavoring it and adding our vegetables. First thing we're going to do for flavor is we're going to add some oyster liqueur. If you want to know how to open oysters and have a little bit more information about them, go to another video on our channel about how to open oysters and how to know if they're good or not, because that's very important. Bad oysters can make you sick. So, when we open oysters, the liqueur often comes out with little pieces of shell. For that, we need a little sieve, because we don't want that in the soup. Crunchy soup is not exactly the best thing, unless it's the good kind of crunchy. So here we go. We put in the oyster liqueur, which is going to give it a nice brininess. It's going to replace a portion of the salt. And we are also going to use the oysters themselves. So when they're in, what we need to do is blend them in. That's great. Now that we have the oysters and the brine in the soup, we're going to start to put our vegetables in. Little word of advice: when the soup is thick, don't have the heat too high, or it might burn in the bottom. Another thing you can do to ensure that your soup is good is you take a wooden ladle and you just move it while scraping the bottom all the time, just to see where it's at. Because the soup now doesn't need to reduce anymore, it just needs to cook the stuff that's going in it. First thing we're going to put in is what takes the longest to cook: root vegetables. Here we have some carrots, some celery, and some parsnip. One of the good things about the root vegetables is they're going to flavor the soup too. Now, you have to wait a while because the root vegetables have to cook. After that, we're going to have a little secret ingredient apart from the oysters. This is my own personal twist on a fish soup. We're going to have some of these onion tops. We're going to have some fresh dill. And at the end, we're going to put our fish and our peas, because the peas can be al dente. That's very beautiful. The root vegetables in the soup are cooked. Now we're going to put my next secret weapon on top of the oysters, and that is dried seaweed. This is called simply seaweed. It's dried kelp. That's really going to help bring the sea to the fish soup. After simply seaweed, we've got our beautiful green onion tops, and we have some dill as well. Now, the next things I'm putting into the soup are coming in rapid succession because they don't really need to cook for a long time. Neither does the fish, by the way. Fish in a fish soup should be cooked for the shortest time, just until it starts to become a little bit firm. So, like I said, onion tops in. And these are dill stalks. They will tolerate the heat a little bit better, but don't cook them too long or you'll make your soup bitter. That's why they should go in at the end. And I think, personally, the dill stalks are underused because there's so much beautiful anisey taste in them. And they go beautifully for soups, giving a little bit of the right kind of crunch. When that's done, we've got our peas. That's the main ingredient that's going to give this a little bit of body other than the fish. And last but not least, our beautiful smoked haddock and Norwegian salmon. So, what you want to do now is let it come up to temperature until it starts to bubble just a little bit. And while it's coming up to temperature, the taste is changing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to taste it along the way. That is quite special. While the soup is heating up, I'm going to make ready a plate so you can see how it looks when it's really done. All right, dear friends, the soup is ready to go. I tell you, I'm really excited to see what it looks like. It's creamy. I've been tasting it along the way. I've been adjusting with salt and pepper, which you should do. I've been adding a little bit of seaweed because I thought it gave it a very nice ozone-y taste. So now the soup is slowly bubbling, and that's what I want. I don't want it to cook too much or I'll overcook the fish. What we do now is we just spoon it out nice and slow. Keep your plate edges clean. You can always dry them off if you mess up, which I probably will. Ah, lucky, lucky.
He scores!
No drops on the edges. Did I speak too soon? I did not. Here we go. And here we have it. This is a beautiful, comforting dish, which you can serve for any occasion. You can serve it in a family dinner, you can serve it for a date. It's a great starter. It's just the kind of dish that's gonna give you a smile on your face and it's gonna fill your tummy real good. So this is my version of a creamy fish soup with smoked haddock, with oysters, with salmon, and with kelp. Enjoy. See you later.